So we are on the verge of saying good afternoon, but I'll go ahead and say good morning. We've got a few more minutes left. As you know, I am Amy Altizer. I am a priest in the Diocese of Utah, and this is Patricia Fava, my co-conspirator. Nice to meet all of you. So you should have 3 pieces of information in front of you this morning. We are not going to take you through these pieces of information, but we wanted to offer them to you so you could see how mission and vision carry forward in practical context. I am originally from Washington State and found my way to Utah about 15 years ago. I met Patricia at about that time. So we met in the kitchen. I was the chef at the Avenues Bakery. Yeah. So we have had the blessing of friendship for 15 years.
15 years now.
Yeah, 15 years now. So.
And we got together to do this work because we wanted to understand how we might be able to work with what we know and find something socially relevant, and we could incorporate a mission beyond that. So this is a seed of an idea that started maybe 5 to 6 years ago with open conversation and a lot of inspiration and a lot of voices.
Yes. So can everyone hear before we go any farther? Is there any? Move closer. No. Okay. So, one of the important things that I want to share with you this morning is that while I am an Episcopal priest, this was not started while I was an Episcopal priest. I became an Episcopal priest throughout the process of this, and don't think that starting something like this will get you ordained. It might actually get you kicked out. You'll understand more in a little while.
True.
So, Patricia happens to not be an Episcopalian, as we're...
Not an Episcopalian, not a priest.
No.
And really just mostly a person that had an equal desire to serve.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this was started, we're in our 6th year. So 5 years ago, a group of 5 of us came together. And 2 of us did happen to be Episcopalians, and the other 3 were not. 2 came from a background of having grown up and served missions in the LDS Church. And Patricia can tell you her own journey.
Yes, I mean, I was baptized Catholic, but that was like a cradle Catholic. You probably have heard that term before. Born in it, not really a participant in it. But I spent a lot of years just in discovery, a little bit of time in the Catholic Church, and since now just removed myself from all organized religion, but work always on the edge of spirituality and understanding of spirituality and the human conditions. More of that than a church relationship.
So it really started out as community relationship, and that's the point. It started out crossing what may have seemed like divides, particularly if you have any opinions about the LDS faith or the state of Utah, or the dominant faith in Utah being the LDS Church. It started out by crossing divides of those who seemed religious and non-religious. It started out by crossing divides of those who seemed righteous, or possibly you may think unrighteous by the time you get to know who we work with. It may seem like it's not even church at the get-go. But yet I think that if you dig a little deeper, you will realize that it is everything church. I think that it would be best if we started out just kind of showing you a little bit about our mission, vision, and how this project was birthed. And then I think in a breakout session, we'll move to talking with you about probably the reverse engineering. How do you get something like this to happen? And I'll try to walk through that reverse engineering process with you. So that you know where we're at today, here in year 6. And how is it that Episcopalians are involved? Well, of course, there's me. There's also a deacon who was one of our original 5, and she was not a deacon at the time that we started this either. We also have board members who are part of the Episcopal faith and tradition. And this year, the diocese did join us with some financial granting. So if you're wondering, how do you get something off the ground without funds? We can also talk about that. This started with absolutely no money. It had no bank account and no donor. So anything is possible. But we'll go ahead and show you the video that we filmed a year ago. This is only 1 year old, and you'll see how much things have even changed.
Hold on a second. For some reason, the sound is not coming through good. Give me just a second. We didn't check it out this end beforehand, which is always a mistake. Let me...
Not fair to show that wonderful bread before lunch.
Can you give me that? It's provocative. I'm going to whoever got here. So we're provoking. Let me try this. All right.
We really did.
We can't heal as people when we have to do it by ourselves. None of us can actually go alone.
With everything that a person is struggling with chronically getting out of incarceration, the last thing we need to worry about is where can I find community, and we need the support.
Everybody who gets out needs to have a fair chance at a good life.
Flourish Bakery is a life and job skills training program. Individuals who come to this come with backgrounds of substance use disorder recovery and or incarceration. Backgrounds that have blocked them, who have marginalized them to the edges of society. We are a 15-month-long pastry training with an externship back end of that and job placements. With open jobs needing to be filled and individuals needing to be trained, we are the bridge between the need and the desires. Challenges that we face, how we see one another, and our preconceived notions of who the other person is before we ever actually get to know them.
We know that it's a little scary to approach a community or people that you won't all be the one how to know them.
The hardest part about putting my life back together was to become part of something, to become connected to a community, or become part of some effort, some common goal.
To help our people who have been recently incarcerated who recovery to get them back on their feet, actually have a chance to actually live in society. Again, it's a phenomenal thing.
Individuals can be given the opportunity for new life in a program that offers them nurturing environments. Kind of like the way bread works. The simplicity of 4 ingredients, flour, water, yeast, and salt, given patience and time, and an environment that is nourishing, can produce an incredible transformation of life and life sustenance.
And we appeal to the community to support this cause.
Consider donating your time or your dollars.
It takes everybody to be part of the solution. So we're asking you to be part of this.
We will be reaching out to anyone who might have something to offer.
This is an opportunity to really help change someone's life.
It's worth it. Flourish Bakery looks forward to helping individuals and the community reduce recidivism and relapse rates, and that benefits everyone. Could you scroll down to the mission
can't watch that without tearing up. How was that? And I've seen it 100 times.
Thanks, ma'am.
So 1 year ago, that's where we sat. We brought the community of interested parties together to put forth a mission statement, to put forth an idea and a dream. And a year later, we're not even a year, we're 9 months later from the launching of a pilot program in January, we have now created the community of those that we serve. And it's a fascinating difference, and we've been reflecting on it this whole trip, which has been really great for us as well, reviewing that process and where we are from where we started.
Yeah. So thank you for inviting us here, because this has given us a great opportunity to reflect on what can happen in 9 months. Well, actually, you can birth a baby. And that is exactly what has happened. So, we are actually one social enterprise. Flourish Bakery is one social enterprise of Unshackled. And Unshackled is the parent 501c3, the nonprofit, which is the umbrella nonprofit for a multitude of social enterprises and ministries to be developed underneath that umbrella. We designed that specifically and purposefully that way. We researched across the nation different like-minded groups. Let's see, we started with Haley House in Boston, which was a Catholic worker movement. Also looked at Thistle Farms, an Episcopal movement in Tennessee. Where else have we visited, Patty?
The Seattle Recovery Cafes.
Seattle Recovery Cafe, yes.
And then our all-time favorite would be the Homeboy Industries, which is a fabulous, if you haven't had an opportunity to learn about them, there's a PBS special on them, and the work they do is directed by Father Craig Boyle.
Which again was a Catholic movement. And we also looked at Fair Start, a training program in Seattle for culinary training and placement for individuals from backgrounds of homelessness, incarceration, living on the streets in Seattle. Mostly what we found were groups that were 30 years old and had been started mostly by Catholic groups, which gave us great hope. So we could kind of hope to see ourselves in that as we aged.
That's right. And the other thing is we really sensed that our own personal community, Salt Lake City, is a very philanthropic community, but they hadn't really done something quite like this yet. And we felt like the opportunity was very apparent.
Yes.
That it would be witnessed and welcomed and ready for success.
Yes. I think that in doing a lot of research and finding that not everything was a religious program, especially when we looked at Recovery Cafe in Seattle. Recovery Cafe, I met while at a conference of the Episcopal Church, recovery conference of the Episcopal Church, while in Seattle. And Recovery Cafe has a very low barrier to entry. You just have to be clean or sober in that moment.
Right then.
Right then and there. Your intention to use later, and your intention or your practice of use previously to arriving were not judged. It was only about being clean and sober in that moment, to be a part of that community. And by becoming a part of that community, you developed a space of being and of family, literally of community, the whole purpose. And that was a very important piece for us, because it's more than jobs. It's more than life skills training. It's more than providing an individual a transitional employment program after incarceration. It is about providing a space for community, a space of love, a space of worthiness, a space of reconciliation. It is all about the sacraments that we hold near and dear to our hearts. It is about that space of accountability, of confession, It is all the things that we do as a church. So you might be surprised when I say to you, it's not about saving the church. In fact, you can't. You can't do something like this in hopes that you are going to increase the membership in your parish. You can't do something like this in hopes that you are going to increase the bottom line of your budget and giving. And you can't do something like this if your intention is conversion economics. And what I mean by that is getting someone to profess exactly your belief. If that is your hope, your desire, they will sniff it out a mile away and never bother to show up. So that what they're looking for is transparency, authenticity, and a space of love and acceptance. Now you may think I'm talking about only people who are incarcerated or individuals from backgrounds of substance use recovery, but let's check our own hearts. What is it that we long for? We long for a space where we can be vulnerable together, where we can be loved for exactly who we are, regardless of what we believe about ourselves or what society says about us. And so that's how we begin breaking down the us and them. We see ourselves in the other.
And we see how we are profoundly more alike than we are different from one another. And to stand shoulder to shoulder, which is what Father Greg Boyle always shares, with those that we somehow sense as another, is the greatest reconciliation one can have.
Yes, yes. So this started years ago when Meg and I first met. I swore I was never going back into the kitchen. Patty heard me say that many, many times. Many times. I swore I was never heading back into the kitchen. If you know anything about kitchens, those are very hard spaces. And they're hard on the body, hard on the spirit sometimes, depending on where you're working. And yet, God laughs. I think she finds a great sense of humor when I say no.
Yes.
So if what you've heard from me is to say that everything is about not saving the church, I will also tell you this is actually what saves the church. Because it is church. This doesn't gather on a Sunday morning. We actually attempt to take some Sundays off when I'm not visiting with individuals in our community, either sometimes at the jail or in other spaces where their needs are being met. Then I serve at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Park City. So while this is not about saving the church, it can't be motivated by saving the church, no matter how much we want to keep our lights on or preserve our buildings and our traditions. It's not about that. Yet everything about this is church. And I'll be very honest with you. It will save the church. Because authentic living, a transparent heart, sharing of love and worthiness with every single person we pass is horribly intriguing and greatly infectious. And people want to know where they can get that. And then how can they be that? And then where can they share that? And that is exactly what's happened.
That's been our story.
So I can tell you that this work is all about the gospel. Because it is what you do for the least of these, you have done unto Christ. It is always about living and being on the margins. It's about working on the margins. It's about expanding the circle. Always about stretching. In fact, the chair of our board has a lovely term he uses, which he actually coined during the process of working with our bakers, our interns. It's soul stretching. It will stretch us to a point where we think we could have never gone. It will stretch us to a point where we could not even have envisioned of going, where we couldn't have drawn a map to that area, didn't even know it existed. It is out on the edges that we have yet to meet. And so it is always about being on the margins, whether it's with the people who we believe live on the margins, or who we've pushed to the margins. It's about joining that edge. It's about being on that edge. In fact, Ed is our chair of our board. He will also say it's about being out on the skinny branches. If you feel like you need to hug the tree trunk, this might not be for you.
Not for the faint of heart.
You're out there when the wind whips and the storms come, and you are right clutching the skinniest of branches, because you don't know what the next right step is yet. And it will reveal itself. Trust me, it always does. Always reveals itself. This process is exceedingly messy. And you can't do it from the safety of your pew, I promise you. It's exceedingly messy. I think, Patty, you had some great thoughts about that this weekend. About how there's not a roadmap to this.
Oh, we do think that. And we feel very humbled to know these things now after 5 years in process and 9 months on with our feet in it, really in the mud. But what we've constantly experienced was the ability for us to be open to the direction of whether it's the divine or other that has really led to our rapid success and our prolific success, as we'd say, with our program and the opportunities that we've been able to cultivate. And that is just that great openness, that sense of we really don't have this all figured out. And we have trust that we didn't need to have it all figured out. But allowing the openness, allowing the path to fall in front of us, which we've said so many times, is like, how is this possible that everything is just coming to us? But we sense that always that we were onto something. We were onto a really important need in our community in particular, and we feel very blessed in many ways that we've been received with that great, generous opportunity that has come over to.
Yeah. I think that our religious language around that might use the terms that it's a mystical journey. And the path reveals itself by walking. You first step onto it, and it will clear for you as you go. It will reveal itself. You will see which way. It might really look like shrubs and jungle, but you really have to, in faith, take that first step. So it's all about faith. I would say that if we joked about this, you probably, if you are a business major, don't want to hear us say this.
But it would be sacrilege for
it is a little sacrilege for business. We did not write a business plan from the get-go. I know, it's
horrified gasps, I know, from the audience.
But we knew the funding wasn't coming from a bank. So we did not need that plan at that stage. We also knew that we did not know all the steps. We could. Each of us has opened a multitude of businesses, resorts, run operations. It's not like we're foreigners to a budget. It's not like we've never run a P&L. It's that we knew this was different.
Remarkably different.
Yeah. This was... And I hate to say ministry is not about business, that you don't need to keep good sound numbers, but this was more driven by ministry, and then the budget and the plan, the business plan would reveal itself as we stepped forward. So, this is frequently extremely messy and spontaneous. So if you do need everything outlined before you're willing to sign on and agree, this is going to press your comfort zone. It's going to press you a lot. I am a Myers-Briggs J, a very strong J. Over 25 plus years of testing and retesting, that J hasn't moved, really. So I am a decisive, balanced, love to know the whys, the hows of something before I will say it feels like it's the right decision. That's not about feeling at all, that's analytics. This moves from the gut, from the heart. This moves from a sense of discernment, of knowing, of a deep embodied knowing, which you might identify as what it is to follow the Spirit, or a spiritual path. We do that as a group. We meet in discernment, spiritual discernment, and also in reflection. Both with a spiritual director who's multi-faith, because our group is multi-faith. We also meet with someone with a background in therapy to help us through a reflective process of how we're working as a group, how we're working with one another, and what bumps we're putting in the road. It is constantly necessary for us to reflect and to remain in the Spirit of what we do, and in that spirit of discernment process. This is all about breaking bread. So if you thought it was unfair to show you bread before lunch and we didn't bring any, sorry. But it is all about breaking bread. It started as breaking bread.
It did indeed. We had a funny name for our meetings. Originally it was called the cheese board. Because we're really just doing the conceptualizing of identifying the need, identifying our expertise and our ability to participate, our ability to have a commitment like this and what it would take out of us. And then sharing story, which is what really those cheese boards were more about. And a lot about the food, because we sure did bring some great food.
That's true. Yes. Everyone in our group came from a background of culinary except for one. So if you're looking for what might draw you together, what might be the space of conception for what you are seeking to do, it might not be with your friends at the church. It might be with people in your community, like-minded chefs, or individuals who are interested in the same social activism or healing work that you are. So it's always been about breaking bread together. Everything centers around a meal. It's been about nurturing community. It's been about doing with and not doing to or for. It's not charity. Charity isn't healing. Charity keeps us all sick. It keeps us in a power structure of power over, not power with. So this has always been about power with, a shared space, a co-creative doing with.
Another thing is about understanding, a deep understanding, and a driven understanding of why. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about the why part.
Well, the why, the why developed in our stories, in our conversations. It developed around that community table of breaking bread. We found our common why together. Yeah, actually, Patty is a really great matchmaker. Both in business and
necessarily for myself. You know, I'm single for 25 years, but I am a good matchmaker.
Yes, because that skill is about listening. And Patty is a great listener. And she was listening to a couple different individuals who had never met one another, one of them being myself, and another one being one of our original founders, and said, you guys need to meet. And so it was over a dinner that we did finally meet.
Right, and it spurred all of this, the future of this conversation, and the future of this opportunity.
Yes, it did. So seeds get planted in the strangest of places. Patty actually knew Jason from work. So we found our why by the process of listening, by the process of storytelling. And that doesn't require a priest or any clergy whatsoever to do that job. So as Patty told you, she's not a clergy, but she's an incredible listener. And I will tell you that it doesn't, that these things don't happen initiated by clergy. Sometimes they might, but they didn't in this situation. They didn't happen because it was initiated by the institution, because while I was a part of the parish, it wasn't instituted by the parish. It wasn't instituted by the diocese either. So this is instituted, this is, the impetus for things like this happens by the people. And the reason it happens by the people is because the people actually are the church. Not the building and not the institution, but it's each person in this room that is the church. Ordained or not, we are all called. And another word for calling, or finding one's purpose, as maybe the young generations say these days, is what we term finding the why. Your core reason for doing what it is that you do. Because that would be your compass. It is our compass. We take everything back to our why. Every opportunity that comes forth.
Does this match our why? We
Yeah.
ask this question whenever we're in discernment about some big decision or a change, or even just, this will sound trite, but even our marketing material, it has to reflect that for us. It has to never, ever falter from the why.
No. So we filter everything. So we run it through the why filter, the coffee filter. Does this match? Because when we get into breakout a little bit, I can explain to you the why, the how, and the what. And that's not something I personally developed. If you're familiar with the work of Simon Sinek at all, he does a great teaching about the why, the how, and the what. But your why is your center core. And if you start making decisions from the space of your how or the space of your what, if you think about it as a bullseye, then you lose your authenticity. And so filtering everything through our why keeps us authentic to the work that we are called to do. So whether or not you believe in the idea of calling, whether or not someone pushes it back against the word of being called to do something. So I've grown up with many an individual who bucks the term call. Then that can also be found in finding your why or your purpose, because that we all seek. We all seek that purpose which is greater than ourselves. I think that's probably why we're here today. And we did that by listening. Because listening to story is meaning making. And all humans hold wounds. And our stories are frequently based around our wounds. And the sharing of those wounds with one another. And the hope for healing of those wounds. Because in reality, all those wounds, those traumas, large and small, those are all spiritual traumas. At the core or at the base of every single one of those traumas is the why me? Why did God, whether or not we believe in God, allow this to happen to me, to my loved one, to my family? Why? And so we do that through that listening space, through holding that listening, through holding one another's story, through journeying with one another in the healing of wounds. And as we introduced that to the community, we did that with listening sessions. Listening in the greater community has been exceedingly important because the population we work with brings up a lot of fear. We are housed in Salt Lake Community College. And to develop the agreement to lease the college's space, where they had this fabulous catering kitchen that was not utilized at all, really required overcoming barriers of fear. Always it's about the barriers of fear. And so our work continuously is being that middle space what you might call a third space, the space between two seemingly dissimilar points on a binary. We host that space. We host that space in the community college, downtown Salt Lake. We host that space at a farmer's market. We are preparing to host that space with a food truck that we are building out. Mobile space.
We're going to come to you.
So it's always about hosting that middle space, because hosting that middle space, that third space, is how we overcome our differences. How two people who would be seemingly dissimilar would actually birth what is Unshackled and Flourish Bakery.
Opportunity for understanding and access, and in that space offers an enormous variety of opportunities, and access is very important to us too. That you now, a patron of us, your side of the fence, has the opportunity to access someone on the other side of that fence in this space that we've nourished and created, and we give people freedom to access one another, to understand one another, to bring that to the public. And it's actually been a beautiful thing to experience. And wherever we go with our group, and especially our farmers markets this summer, it also compels people to share their stories. And you immediately associate with those that have either suffered from addiction or lost someone to addiction or have someone in prison that they're trying to hold hope for. And it's an exchange you never expect that you're going to benefit from in such a deep and meaningful way, but you do. And the shared story, to watch one of our folks, our interns as we name them, head-to-toe tattoos, history this long of legal issues and criminal activities, stand next to, a very nice, neat, organized gentleman and be able to hold his own and tell him about what's possible for his son that's in prison or his nephew that passed. Or it's a fascinating moment, and it's very, very, very beautiful to experience.
It is. It's an amazing opportunity, this third space, this middle space. And I think what we have realized is that the mobility of that space is key to what we do. It is healing. It is restoration. To watch AJ, who is, as Patty said, head to toe in gang tattoos from LA, who has spent 7 years of his life incarcerated, some of those in solitary confinement, and he is only 29 years old. To watch him engage people, and to watch children be so fascinated because of the energy that he exudes of warmth and love.
He has a brilliance that you'd walk by him and never take a moment to notice unless you had this opportunity that we're being able to create.
Yeah. It's a conundrum for people. It's amazing to watch their countenance as they encounter someone who is able to help them into that middle space to do some of their own healing work, because he stands in that middle space. So as we wrap up this morning, we're going to invite you to come and talk with us in a breakout session about more about how this happens, about how it evolves so quickly, how you might find your own why, and where you might birth that in your community. But I want to close with, Jesus, I don't believe, was worried about saving the church. He was worried about taking it on the road. And the church is a relationship. It's a relationship of healing and restoration. It's a relationship of recovery. As Scott so wisely introduced, it is a provocative relationship. There's nothing more provocative than the work of recovery. There's nothing more provocative than restoration and healing. And that can happen in a 12-step community. Many of your churches probably host them. And it can happen in Bakery, where we start with reflection each morning. We break bread together as a community meal at lunch. We hold story. We create space for the larger community to find their own healing and identity discernment as they encounter this, the bakery.
And sometimes we bake.